good afternoon, and very good afternoon. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Viewgraphy. I hope you guys doing great. Yes, I wasn't able to make much videos because I'm busy some in corporate work, but just trying back and forth uh, to make some educational photography related content, hopefully which help you guys to grow and to do some better photography. Well, today's video is a bit of a different. It's of course it's about photography, and it's more about us as a photographer, but from a photography perspective. Now, what that's supposed to mean? Well, I was having a discussion the other day with a bunch of photographers, and we were discussing about genre of photography, what kind of genre we are shooting. The people from my home country, they are mostly do wedding photography, all right. And of course, wedding photography, it's more about documenting an event which is happening in an artistic way. And we were discussing about different focal lengths, how the different focal lengths basically affects the genre we are shooting, all right, which makes sense. But it's from more from the focal length perspective. I see photography in a different way. I see photography how my mind is. Like for example, I was looking other people's work and then I was looking at my work. I'm gonna put some slides in between, all right, while you are listening to me. And what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to put my images in this video to give you the perspective how I am or what my mind is, which ultimately drives my photography, which ultimately drives the type of images that I take. This is the video is all about. Like, it's all about mind games. It's all about how me, you, or anybody else is. Like how you see the world. Like what kind of personality you are having. What kind of uh, what kind of tough time that you been through. You know, we evolve with the passage of time. Our mind basically evolves. Our mind basically learn from the different highs and lows of our lives, which impacts our mind. And consciously or subconsciously, we don't know that, but more about more kind of these events which happen in our life affects our mind unconsciously, our subconscious mind. We don't know that. We don't feel those changes, but it's happening and it's affecting our mind, which ultimately reflects in our images. Like I mentioned this point in my video before. I was sharing my work with one of my colleague at work, and he is also a photographer. So we both discussing, and he saw my work. His name is Mohammed Imtiaz. He's a very nice gentleman, and he was saying to me that after looking at my work, he said, "Baba, your work is basically more kind of a lonely. Your work represents like when we see your work, we see loneliness. We see like you are, and then I asked, what do you mean by loneliness? He said then, when I see your images, I see a lone tree, a lone car, a alone building. Like whatever the subject, the main subject you are shooting is always alone. And I didn't get his point at that time, but I went back home. I put all of my images on a big screen uh, on which I usually do my edits. And I start looking all of the images at once and I just start scrolling from the latest down to the past. images that I took. And I was start observing my work, in a way which I never did. I start seeing my work from other people point of view. Like Imtiaz, my friend, he said that my work is lonely, and I was like, okay. When I started scrolling my work, seeing my work on the screen, then I started noticing, oh yes, he's right. He's right. He said that uh, I am having seeing the world in a totally isolated way. Like, for example, when you talk about landscapes, okay, you talk about these wide, wide angle lenses when it comes to landscape, like 13 millimeter, 14 millimeter, up to 20 millimeter, something like that. Like 14-24 is the range when you talk about landscape. I don't see that. When I see landscape even with longer focal length. I somehow my mind always try to isolate the subject even from the vast landscape in a very isolated way. Like if I'm having a scenery of a sunset or a landscape, I my mind automatically narrow it down to the main subject using a longer focal length. So most of my landscape shots are from between 200 to 500 focal length. Between 200 to 500 focal length, basically that's what my main. I use my 200 to 500 f5.6 lens, and I always try to isolate the subject using the longer focal length. That's how I see them, the subjects or the landscape or whatever. Even in the street photography, that's how I do. Because my mind always process any kind of image in that way. That's how my mind is. So some people always, when they see landscape or any event or any gathering, they just basically is using the wide angle lens and they just capture everything. When you go and capture everything, it's very hard to do a nice decent composition, because using a wide angle lens you have to really justify placing the subject in the right way to make sense. For me, using the wide angle focal length is kind of a challenging, because it's very hard for me sometimes to place the subject in the right way to make the sense, to make a very decent composition, a very compelling composition. I'm just talking about myself, so like most of the time. So for me it's very easy to use a longer focal length, isolate the subject, and then place it in a frame, like in a rule of third, like oh, like this, or golden ratio rule, or whatever. So that's how I see the world. I have seen some people, they even in the street photography, they just uh, use longer focal length at 2.8. That's it. Even in street photography, just straight away 200 millimeter 2.8. They always use 70 to 200. That's how they do street photography. Some people, they use slow shutter speed. Some people use colors. Some people like some people use wedding photography style into other photography. Like if even they want to do a landscape or street photography or event photography or portraiture, they use the wedding style. And this is something which I am not able to digest. Like, how come? How come you are using a wedding style or the way you do wedding photography into fashion or into landscape or into portraiture? They just bluntly copying and they're just pasting. So, and I was just checking their work and I was just looking at their work, and then I realized by doing wedding, their mind is always, keep running in that loop. of wedding photography. And even in their subconscious mind, whenever they try to do something different, ultimately they just go through with that phase of wedding photography. And so, again, it's all about mind games. Now, another thing which I've noticed, and people do wildlife photography, people do artistic photography, people do wildlife plus artistic photography. And we as a user, we as a viewer, we don't have enough knowledge to differentiate these things. Like if a person doing a wildlife photography is capturing animal in action or animal in a wild, like cheetah is running prey, or animal or elephant view, or giraffe having a very nice silhouette while the sun is setting at the back, the elephant or giraffe having a very nice silhouette, in a very artistic way. Okay, but there are certain photos which doesn't make sense. Like, is this a really wildlife photo or is pure artistic photo? I'm gonna show you a slide of one photographer. His name is Gurchan, from South Africa, I believe. No, from Nigeria. My apologies. From Nigeria, and his work is exceptionally different, and he's a wildlife photographer. But the way he do, it's pure art, unlike I ever seen from somebody else. But the problem is people who are liking certain wildlife photographer, they are not able to understand his work because his work, the Gurchan work, is purely artistic. It's purely artistic. Whereas the other photographer work, of course, is wildlife, very damn good, but it's not that kind of a giving that artistic approach which it should be. Or again, both are doing wildlife. Like not both actually. There are many people who are doing wildlife photography, but Gurchan work is different. The idea is again mind games. I try to do more kind of artistic work. Even I don't realize that people say, okay, you are doing some really artistic photos, and I was scratching my head. I was like, how come I'm doing artistic? But like, for example, I'm just trying to take a picture the way I see the world. I don't know I am artistic photographer or not, but my mind always see the world differently. My mind always try to see the world in a way which nobody else seen it. There are certain common things. Like I took this image of this Minar using an iPhone. I was sitting in the car. There was a red light, and I was just sitting in the car waiting for light to turn green, so I started driving the car. And I just look at the left of my. I saw this Minar, and the person was about to go, and I was like, okay, that looks a good scene. I immediately lowered the window, used my iPhone, took a shot. That's it. I did nothing. I was sitting in the car over the red light. It was just from a car. I just see something which are about to happen differently. Like the Minar was there and the person was about to, pass by next to it. And I was there and the light on the sky was the sunset almost done, so it was start fading and it looks different to me. So my mind quickly improvised and said to me, it can be a good shot. So I immediately lowered down the window, used my phone and took the shot because there was no time for going to the camera and take a shot, do the setting. Phone is the best way to do a quick photo. Again, I improvised and it turned out to be a decent image. For many photographers, probably this doesn't look a photo as well. For me, it's a different type of image. It's a totally different, like nobody else have ever seen, in my humble opinion. So again, this is how my mind see the world. The way I just immediately isolating the subjects. I immediately seeing the things before it happens and I improvise it, quickly take whatever the camera that I have and take the shot. Like another example, this I was strolling at the beach and I saw the sun was rising behind this Fujairah port, Khurfakan port in Fujairah, and the person was about to walk and I took the shot using a phone. Again, I used the phone. So I there are so many images that I improvised and I just take them. Last weekend, I was wandering into the desert and I was just searching for something to shoot because that's my workout. I was just drove the car into the desert and I have really no clue at all where I'm going, what I'm going to shoot. I have zero idea. But the whole idea of the activity that I did here last weekend was to push myself, just go out from the home and try to do something different. So I went out and I was just stopped the car somewhere in the middle. Hopefully that I gonna take some shots. And I literally standing in the middle of the desert, just looking left and right, walking, and I was saying, okay, what to shoot. So I came across this tree and I take a shot, and I thought, okay, can be a good shot, but I was not fully 100% convinced. Too much clutter, composition was okay, and I was like, looks good in color or black and white. I was like, I'm not sure. I still have to check. So it looks okay, but I believe that shot is going to look better in black and white, which I have to do edit in black and white. So far, I haven't touched it. It's just a color photo that I showed you. I was just trying to make a decent composition, and trying to make something different. But it was just an effort. Then suddenly I start hearing the noise of the bird, and I was like, where it? I found it somewhere in the plants bushes, and there were some flowers, the wildflowers, and that bird was picking the nectar from that flower. So it was basically feeding itself, and I immediately rushed towards my car. I took out 200 to 500, D500. That's my main go combo, 200 to 500 f5.6 lens from Nikon and D500. And then why D500? Because it gives me high resolution images. It gives me, even though the D500 is 20.9 megapixel, but it has a pixel density of 45 megapixel, just like D850. So for me, it's the D500, D850, the same thing. So I use the D500 for that, so I get enough cropping if I need to, and 500 will be enough. So I start chasing. I kept my distance and I start chasing the bird. And this is the shot that I got. Of course, it's a crop image. It's a crop image, and it's basically there are around 400 shots I took, but I filter down to these few, and I'm going to show you the those few shots that I took, and I was just keep pushing myself, waiting for the bird to be in a certain position with certain background, with certain light, try to make it a very kind of a quote unquote artistic shot. I am not a wildlife photographer. I never call myself a photographer because it's a big term to, to be, to call yourself. It's once you start calling yourself photographer, it means that there are certain responsibilities comes with the title, and you have to live up with those expectation which comes with the title. And I think I'm not ready, so I always call myself I'm just a clicker. I'm just a guy with a camera who do click click click. So that's what I did. But so these are the shots that I took of that bird, and I think they are good enough. They are not the world class, but at least I pushed myself. I did not care about the timing of the day. People do a lot of homework before they do go out into the shoot. The hardcore bird photographer, the hardcore wildlife photographer, they just do proper homework, the time, the day, the weather, the right gear, and camouflaging themselves to get a exceptionally great shot. I don't do that. I just go out and shoot. Even on that, I am able to capture all these shots which you have seen so far on this in this video by now. Because that's how I see the world. Mind games. Photography is all about mind games. I saw certain comments over my post on Facebook, and people start comparing the Gurchan who I mentioned earlier. He is exceptionally great artistic wildlife photographer, in my opinion. And the people start comparing him with some other people work. And I don't see the comparison actually. Gurchan is having a league of his own. There is no way I going to compare him with other wildlife photographer. I don't see a point. Other wildlife photographers who were mentioned over my post, and their work, it's their own way. They are good. I'm sure they are good. They have done some excellent work. Some of them done really excellent work. But I don't see the comparison between these different wildlife photographers because everybody see the world differently. The way you do photography, or the way you do photography, or you lady who's seeing my video, I don't know. You all of you guys doing photography differently in your own unique way. And I'm not here to judge and tell you that you are doing wrong. You got your own style, you got your own feelings, you got your own static. It's good, it works for you always, so it's your style. But in the end of the day, what matters most is whatever the style that you are having, whatever type of photos that you take, is that work really impacting the community? Is your work really impacting the viewers? Is your work really making name for you? Not among your friend who always going to like your image regardless it's good or bad. I'm talking about globally. Is your work really like being acknowledged by the world who doesn't know you? If your work has been acknowledged by the world, by the people who haven't met you, who doesn't know you, then your work is exceptional. Then you are making some really nice progress. Then you are making some name for yourself. That's my definition of being a successful photographer or a photographer who is impacting the community, the photographer's community, by his or her work. And this judgment thing, like how you judge other people photographer, like you are yourself who haven't done anything in a particular genre, and you are basically judging other people without doing that genre. It's something we shouldn't do that. For example, like most of the people who are doing weddings, they start quickly judging other people's style with, about wildlife or fashion or portraiture. It doesn't make sense. You are a wildlife photographer, so there is no way you can judge a photographer who's doing fashion. Or if you are a landscaper, I don't see a point of validation or the weight in your statement which you are passing over a portrait photographer work. I hope you get my point. So this again, it ultimately comes to the mind games. It's really once you start seeing other people work and their styling, the way they take photos, forget about the gear, forget about the brand they are using. Just look at their work. A people work tells a lot about them, lot about their personality, lot about how they see the world. It's really, really strange. It's scary and it's fun at the same time, actually. Once you start seeing people's work, at Flickr or 500px or up.com or Facebook or Instagram, whatever. I don't see Instagram a place where you can see the quality of the image because on the small screen it doesn't make any sense. But yeah, on a big screen, laptop, tablet, big screen, you can see the impact of the photo. So I wish you guys to see other people work on a big screen, so it will gives you a whole lot of different perspective how the other people do photography. Instagram is not the criteria in my opinion. I mean, small screen doesn't justify people work. It doesn't make any sense. It's good for influencers, models. It's good for them. I don't want to go into details why Instagram is so popular over the influencers. It's better off some other discussion on some other day. So that's it. I hope I make sense in today's video because today's video is all about mind games. It's all about how you see the world. Like I said earlier, for me, landscape is not about 1424. For me, it's about 200 to 500. That's how my mind works. For you, maybe it's something else. Maybe for you, it's 2470. That's how you see the world. It's all about mind games. Like I said, it's scary and fun at the same time. I hope you like this video, and I'll see you guys in future with some new content. Till then, take care. Have a very great day.